Rin was supposed to die before the final battle, poisoned by the darkness his party was fighting. But 300 years later, the Grand Mage returns as a child, and the world he wakes into is already showing cracks. Spoiler warning for chapters 0 through 9 of this Korean manhwa. Rin was once a brilliant mage connected to a hero party battling a void-like threat. When his body failed, he used desperate magic to preserve a promise to return. Now he has awakened in the body of a young noble boy, surrounded by adults, academy customs, and a world that remembers pieces of the old crisis but may not understand what is coming next. The early story is about contrast. Rin looks powerless, yet his reactions, knowledge, and magical instincts keep revealing that his soul belongs to someone who survived an age of monsters, war, and impossible spells. Chapter 0 opens in a world already drowning in catastrophe. Fire, ruined landscapes, dark skies, and magical battlefields create the feeling of a final war rather than a simple adventure. A party of warrior and mage-like companions gathers against overwhelming enemies, with a light-haired rogue figure repeatedly framed as important among them. The group moves from serious conversations into dangerous travel, then into combat where bright blue and green magical effects clash with monstrous threats. The later half escalates into huge beasts or dragon-like enemies and elemental explosions, suggesting this party is facing something far beyond normal monsters. By the end, the survivors gather in a quieter scene, but it feels less like peace and more like the silence after disaster. This chapter gives Rin's past the shape of a legend and prepares the tragedy behind his return. Chapter 1 shifts from ominous magical imagery into Rin's new life. It begins with a dark sequence involving a blue-haired figure and shadowy companions, keeping the old fantasy conflict alive in the background. Then the scene moves into a brighter town or estate, where a young dark-haired boy becomes the focus. Rin is shown in courtyards, formal rooms, household spaces, and noble-looking interiors while adults and children gather around him. The exact conversations are unclear, but the structure makes the situation readable. He is being placed into a new social world, watched, guided, and treated as a child. At the same time, glimpses of armored or adventurer-like groups suggest memory pressing into the present. The chapter's darker red-toned ending reminds us that reincarnation has not freed Rin from the past. It has only hidden him inside a new identity. Chapter 2 narrows the focus to Rin's immediate surroundings. He sits in a bright room near a tall arched window, speaking with an older dark-haired young man. The mood is gentle but serious, like the adults are trying to understand him without saying everything openly. A red-haired woman enters and warmly embraces him, giving the chapter its most emotional beat and making his new life feel personal instead of abstract. But the warmth is balanced by tension. Papers and a red-sealed document sit on a desk, and the group continues discussing something important around Rin. Later, the dark-haired young man and red-haired woman walk away through a corridor, still caught in quiet conversation. The chapter ends on a reflective outdoor view with a pale figure overlooking sunlit grounds, widening the story from family space toward academy or political concerns. Chapter 3 begins with a damaged dark figure near a cracked magical pattern, suggesting an old disaster, corpse, enemy, or memory that still matters. Then the story cuts to a bright grassy field, where Rin and a black-haired girl find small blue flowers. The girl reacts with innocent excitement, running through the field and treating the flowers like a beautiful discovery. Rin's response is different. He studies the flower as if he recognizes something unusual about its magic. When the glowing bloom releases sparkling blue light, the scene turns from peaceful to alarming. A large blue-white surge erupts, shocking both children and pushing Rin into analysis rather than panic. The chapter then expands into images of fire magic, golden barriers, and red-blue spell clashes, linking this small flower to larger magical history. Rin ends the chapter with new clues, but not full answers. Chapter 4 places Rin more clearly inside an academy-like rhythm. He appears as a young dark-haired student moving through rooms, desks, and conversations with other figures. A long dark-haired woman in light clothing seems to address or instruct students, while Rin interacts with people in bright interiors and windowed rooms. On the surface, this looks like training life, lessons, introductions, study, and observation. But the chapter keeps interrupting that calm with a red, black, and white supernatural image, suggesting a vision, memory, magical pressure, or hostile force. Later pages add more group discussion and a darker outside or night setting, before closing on an ominous image involving a monstrous or magical presence and a red-eyed young male figure. The consequence is clear even without readable dialogue: Rin's new school life is not safe. Something dangerous is already bleeding into it. Chapter 5 continues the slow build through quiet movement and serious conversations. Rin appears indoors with speech bubbles around him, then moves through red-toned rooms, busier public spaces, and academy or settlement-like areas. A dark-haired adult stays near him in some scenes, while a red or pink-haired woman appears in later interior conversations. The repeated windows, halls, and adult discussions make the chapter feel like preparation. Rin is being moved through a structure of rules, responsibilities, and decisions that he cannot fully ignore. Then the tone shifts again. The final pages slide into a darker magical setting, lit by red and blue energy. It is unclear whether this is a confrontation, ritual, memory, or vision, but it changes the chapter from quiet setup into warning. Whatever is happening around Rin is not only social pressure. It has a magical threat behind it. Chapter 6 turns the tension into a direct magical display. It opens with Rin speaking indoors with several adults, including a pale-haired elder or instructor-like figure who seems to observe him closely. After that, the scene shifts into a snowy or icy outdoor area, creating the feeling of a test, training exercise, or controlled confrontation. Rin stands in the cold while another figure watches or challenges him. Then the magic escalates, yellow-orange light appears, red energy builds, and flame-like power spreads around the scene. A large circular magical phenomenon forms in the darkness, followed by bright expanding light and symbols. Even if the exact rules are unreadable, the visual result is obvious. Rin's power is abnormal for a child. When the chapter returns to calmer dialogue, the adults now have reason to treat him as something far more serious than a normal student. Chapter 7 takes Rin out of interiors and into a forested journey. He travels with companions through autumn-colored paths while the mood shifts from exploration to danger. The group appears to discuss the area, and darker purple or red magical imagery suggests they are approaching a hostile region. Under dusk or moonlight, a large white and brown one-eyed beast confronts them, growling at close range. Instead of reacting like a frightened child, Rin stares back with intensity and seems to understand or communicate with it. A companion is surprised by this, which makes the moment important. Rin's ability is not just spellcasting, but comprehension of beings others treat as monsters. The beast encounter then gives way to something uglier. Worm-like creatures emerge deeper in the forest, and Rin reacts with anger rather than fear, pushing the story toward a more dangerous fight. Chapter 8 begins quietly, with distant exterior views around a cold or mountainous area and small figures moving through structures or interior spaces. A young robed or uniformed character remains central while groups of people appear to gather and react to some growing danger. Then the chapter darkens into red and orange light. The setting becomes chaotic, filled with flames, smoke, and explosive magical effects. The exact cause is unclear, so the safest reading is that Rin is witnessing or responding to a serious crisis rather than an ordinary accident. This matters because the burning imagery echoes the old war shown at the beginning of the recap. The story is connecting Rin's new life to the same kind of destruction that shaped his past. By the end, the world no longer feels like a protected academy setting. Catastrophe is reaching the present. Chapter 9 opens with a dark, flashback-like disaster sequence. Moonlit battlefields, ruined lands, armored or cloaked crowds, smoke, rubble, magical clashes, and massive fire give the impression of a large-scale catastrophe. A red-haired or flame-associated figure appears amid the destruction, and a huge blast consumes buildings before the story cuts sharply into daylight. Rin arrives in a bright academy city filled with crowds, autumn trees, and tall buildings. He speaks with adults and encounters a red-haired girl, but the peaceful city atmosphere quickly cracks. In the street, hostile-looking people confront or strike a purple-hooded elderly person. Rin steps toward the conflict and faces the aggressors with calm control, showing that he will not simply observe injustice from a distance. The chapter leaves him moving onward through the city, but now public trouble has found him. These chapters work as a careful power fantasy setup. Rin is not just strong because he remembers old magic. He is dangerous because he can read patterns others miss: strange flowers, beasts, magical tests, and disasters that resemble the war he survived before. The manhwa keeps placing a legendary soul inside small, controlled spaces: family rooms, academy halls, formal trials, and city streets, then lets the old world leak through the cracks. By chapter 9, Rin is no longer only adjusting to reincarnation. He is beginning to act. The latest conflict with the elderly person shows his instincts are still heroic, even in a child's body. That covers chapters 0 through 9. Subscribe for the next Korean webtoon recap, because Rin's quiet second life is already turning into another battlefield.